You ever really think about your food? Not just what's on your plate, but where it all began. The whole story. For so much of what we eat starts with a single, tiny seed. And it turns out the journey of that seed is overwhelmingly shaped by just a handful of massive companies.
Let's just jump right in and look at the proof. What you're seeing here is the US seed market for some of our biggest crops: corn, soybeans, and cotton. And wow, it's pretty clear, isn't it? The market is almost completely controlled by a few big names: Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta. And that little sliver on the end labeled Other? Yeah, that's literally everyone else all combined. This is what market concentration looks like.
So, who are these players? Well, let's meet them. They're known as the Big Four of agricultural inputs: Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta Group, and BASF. And their influence, it goes way beyond just seeds. They also dominate the global market for agricultural chemicals, the stuff that's essential for modern, large-scale farming. You could say they're pretty much the foundation of it all.
Okay, so how on earth did we get here? And what does it actually mean for us? That's what we're going to break down. First, we'll look at how this all happened. Then, we'll get a sense of the mind-boggling global scale of these companies. We're going to dive deep into the debate around this concentration, see what rules they play by, and finally, ask what it all means for the future of farming.
So let's start with a little history, because it wasn't always like this. For a long time, a lot of seed varieties actually came from public universities, and farmers would just save their own seeds from one year to the next. So what changed? Well, a couple of key things completely flipped the script. It really kicked off in 1970 when the Plant Variety Protection Act basically gave intellectual property rights to seeds, kind of like a patent. Then the 80s brought genetically modified seeds and biotech, which turned the whole industry into a high-tech, super research-heavy field. This paved the way for massive companies to consolidate, which led to the recent mega mergers you see here. Dow and DuPont coming together to create Corteva, and then just a year later, Bayer's colossal acquisition of Monsanto. Okay, so that's how we got here. Now let's talk about today and really try to wrap our heads around the massive, truly global scale these companies are operating on. Just take a look at this table. These are the sales figures for just one of the big four, BASF, in a single year. We're talking tens of billions of euros. Spread out across every corner of the globe, this is so much bigger than just a US story. This is a full-blown global phenomenon. And if you want a number to really put that scale into perspective, here you go, almost 13,000. That's how many people BASF employed in Greater China alone at the end of 2024. That shows you just how deeply these companies are invested in huge growth markets all around the world. And this quote from Syngenta really nails their strategy. It's not just about selling everywhere, it's about being everywhere. Their crop protection unit is based in Switzerland, their seeds unit in the US, another unit in Israel, and of course Syngenta Group China. This global footprint is absolutely central to how they operate. Which of course brings us to the big question, is this much concentration a good thing or a bad thing? And honestly, it's a really heated debate, with some powerful arguments on both sides. Is this all about efficiency, or is it exploitation? It really boils down to a fundamental trade-off. On one hand, the critics worry that with so few companies, they have the power to jack up prices for farmers, limit their choices, and basically squeeze out any smaller competitors. But there's another side to the coin. Proponents argue that their enormous size creates what are called economies of scale, which leads to more efficiency and, the argument goes, lower food prices for all of us. You know, for a little context, let's look at another highly concentrated industry, meatpacking. Some economic research there found that, yeah, the big processors gained market power, but the cost savings from their sheer efficiency were so huge that in the end, consumers actually paid less. It's just a good reminder that this whole debate is way more complicated than it first appears. So with this immense size and global power, what kind of rules are they playing by? Well, they don't operate in a total vacuum. There's a whole framework of international standards and principles that they're expected to follow. If you read the corporate reports from companies like Bayer and BASF, you'll see them point to their commitment to a whole set of global standards. We're talking about major frameworks like the UN Global Compact, guidelines from the OECD for multinational companies, and core labor standards from the International Labor Organization. It's all part of this bigger picture of responsible global business. And these frameworks, they're not just pulled out of thin air. They come from major international bodies like the United Nations, and they're designed to set a global baseline for how corporations should behave. They create a common set of expectations for how these giant companies should manage everything from their impact on the environment to human rights.
All right, so we've looked at the history, we've seen the scale, and we've unpacked the debate.
So let's bring it all home and ask the big question. What does this all mean for the future of farming?
What's become really clear is that our global food system is fundamentally built on a trade-off. On one side, you've got the incredible efficiency that comes from these massive companies. But on the other side, you have the very real risks that come with placing so much power over our food supply into just a few hands.
And that really leaves us with a critical question for the future. Our global population is expected to hit 8.6 billion by 2030. We absolutely need efficient and reliable food production. The challenge is, how do we do that? How do we meet that incredible demand while also making sure the system is fair, competitive, and sustainable for everyone involved, from the farmer in the field to you and me?